So, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to Accessibility Talks. Every month, virtually, we get together and talk about all things accessibility, focusing on website usability. Each month, we invite a speaker to present an accessibility topic, and afterward, we invite the community to ask questions and participate in the discussion. So if you have any questions for our speaker, post them in the little Zoom chat window or on Twitter with the hashtag A11yTalks. That's spelled A11yTalks, A11yTalks. I'm today's host, Amy June Heinlein. I am the Open Source Community Ambassador for Canopy Studios, and our speaker today is Sergei Kriger. He is the front-end developer at Sinner Schrader. In this month's talk, we're going to talk about time control and web accessibility. Sergei will speak to how time of plain web pages and dial-up internet is gone forever. We live in the world where our devices are able to simultaneously operate with tons of data, tweets, notifications, alert messages, progress bars. All the components appear on the web page asynchronously, which makes the user experience more convenient than ever. Being a developer in 2019 means being able to make beautiful, fast, and fully accessible user interfaces. In this talk, you will learn how to apply the best accessibility practices when making asynchronous components and how to test these components with modern assistive technology. Now, before I hand the keys over to you, Sergei, I wanted to ask you about hiking in the Alps. What is your favorite part about it? Because me, it seems pretty treacherous in the right conditions. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, but usually I use the app for that, and there are like three gradations, levels, whatever you call it, like easy, intermediate, and like really hiking. I use usually something like easy or intermediate, so it's nothing super special. And yeah, it's here. I live in Munich, it's south of Germany. It's like Alps are right here, an hour by train, and you're there. So it's just more activity than climbing.
Oh, cool. And the air must be nice and cool and clean up there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay, so are you ready to take it away?
Yep. Okay, let's start then. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. And I'm really glad to have a possibility to speak in front of you, because the topic I'm going to speak, for me, it's quite important and challenging and interesting, and I really want to share what I know regarding this topic. And let's start. My name is Sergei Kriger. I'm a front-end developer from the company called Sinner Schrader. It's probably one of the biggest web studios in Germany, with the offices in Hamburg, Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, where I'm from, and also we have an office in Prague, in Czech Republic. And we are making web applications for the clients like Allianz, Audi, BMW, and many others. And besides front-end development, I'm very interested in web accessibility topic, and this is something we are going to talk about today. And let's take a look first at a page life cycle, but not as we developers see this life cycle, but how our users would see it. So let's imagine that we are our users and we need to see a page, any web page from the internet, right? So what do we need for that? First of all, we need a browser, of course, and then we need to type a URL in the browser address bar, and then we click enter, and for us, as we understand it, browser goes somewhere, takes a page, and brings it back to the browser window, and then renders that. And after some point, when all the resources like fonts, scripts, styles, images are loaded, browser will tell us, hey, you wanted to see a page, now you see it. My job is done here. And that's pretty nice. But what is the chance that this page will stay exactly as we see it now after page loading until we close that page? Well, actually, the chances are really low, because some sites at some point can kindly offer us to log in or register, for example. Or if a website supports private messaging, some websites can send us some messages or notifications. Somebody liked our post, somebody followed us. So all these things can be shown at some point. Or maybe suddenly we can see a lot of banners, advertisement banners, which will disturb us to read the content from the website. Or maybe we will see modal window with a cookie notification or some other information, or maybe if we are lucky enough, we can see even a customer support chart. And look at these elements on the screen now. All of these elements, they don't appear on the page immediately after the page was loaded, right? They appear after some time, or maybe after user does something on the page. And I call these elements asynchronous elements or asynchronous components because they appear on the page asynchronously. And the funny thing is that it doesn't matter if we, as users or as developers, like these elements or not like these elements. It doesn't matter because the reality is that nobody will get rid of these elements easily, because these components, they help to promote website, they help to sell stuff, and people will use this. And we, as web developers, we need to know how to build these elements, but actually not only how to make this element like show these elements on the page, but also how to make these elements convenient for our end users. And now let's take a look at these asynchronous elements from a little bit different point of view. What if we don't see a screen? How will we get information from these elements? Well, if we see the screen, when a new element like a modal window appears, we can simply see it and read the information. But now we cannot even see it, right? So there is no way to get information from those elements. And here you can ask, or why would we turn off the screen? Because usually we don't do that, right? We simply use the website and that's it. And this is correct. We usually don't do that. But there is a big group of people who use the web exactly that way. They don't use the screen. They don't see the screen. They use a keyboard and they use a special software like screen readers. And these users are visually impaired people, for example, blind people, or maybe people with very low vision or with any kind of visual impairment. And these people don't see the screen. And that's pretty much it. So our components that we are making, they can be good and accessible for all the people who see the screen, but totally inaccessible for people who don't use a screen. And today in this presentation, I will show you how we can build these asynchronous components in a way that they are accessible not only for people who see the screen, but also for screen reader users. And we will start from a very simple component, very simple element as a like button. Probably everybody knows what like button does, right? So you can click like button, and like button changes a state from inactive to active, and that means that we liked something. And also, if we click it again, it's inactive. And that means that we either dislike something or unliked something or whatever you call it. So this is all about like button. But now let's imagine the situation. When I click a button and nothing happened. Look, I click it and nothing. I click it again and nothing again. And what would this mean for me? Well, either I need to continue clicking, which looks really weird because I already did it like a couple of times, or maybe I lost the connection, I don't have internet on my machine, or maybe there is an error happened and I don't even know about that. And here we came to the very important topic, very important thing. We as developers need to inform our users about everything that happens on the page, like literally everything, because it's very important for the users to feel comfortable on our websites. Let's take a look how we can improve our like button. Look, I click at the button and now I see a notification, you liked it. And that would mean for me that I did what I wanted. I wanted to like something and I liked something. And now I click it again and I see another notification that I unliked something. So we not only see that button changed a state, but also kind of approve that everything went well. But remember, our goal is not only notify users visually about everything that happens on the website, but also update screen reader users with the new information. So now let's take a look how this like button works for screen reader users. Let's pretend to be a screen reader users, and probably if I'm a screen reader user, I don't need a screen, right? So I simply turn off the light on the screen, and now I start a screen reader.
Voiceover on Chrome, top.
And now with the keyboard, I will jump to the like button.
Like. button application.
And screen reader tells me that now I'm in the like button. And now with the screen reader, I will click this button.
Press like button.
And screen reader told me that I clicked a button. But does that really mean that I liked something? Screen reader told that I clicked it. Yes, it was so, but I'm not sure if my like was really working well. So look, I'm turn on the light and see that nothing happened because there was an error. And screen reader users didn't even know about that.
Voiceover off.
So our next goal is to teach screen reader how to pronounce information we need. And to do so, there are two ways, and we will discuss about both of them today. And we will start from the easiest way to control screen readers, and this technique called live regions. Live regions, it's a set of attributes we can add to any elements to somehow control what screen reader is saying. And we will start from the very popular, probably the most common live region attribute, which is called area live. Area live has three values: polite, assertive, and off. And a little bit later, we will discuss about all of these values. But now, let's actually take a look how we can update screen reader users with new information. Well, first of all, we need to create an element, simple empty element. In my case, it's a div, but you can use any other elements. And then you need to add a live region attribute. In our case, we are adding area live attribute with the value polite. And this is a signal for a screen reader that now it needs to listen to this element, constantly listen to it. And then at the time when I want to update screen reader users, I simply use JavaScript to update the content of this element, and screen reader will automatically pronounce all the content I'm adding to this element. Let's see how that works in practice. The same like button, turning off the light, starting my screen reader,
Voiceover on Chrome.
focusing on the button,
Like button application.
and click it.
Press like. You liked it.
And what happened now? I clicked a button and screen reader told me that, yes, you clicked a button. And then screen reader told me that you liked something. And if I turn on the light, I see exact same text in the visual notification.
Voiceover off.
That means that our like button now accessible not only for people who see the screen, but for all other people as well. And now let's discuss about different values we can use in the area live attribute. And there are three values, as I already said: polite, assertive, and off. And the simplest one, like easiest one out of these three, is off, because off literally does nothing. An element without area live, an element with area live and value off, they do the same. Screen reader doesn't do anything about that. The next value is polite value, and it's so-called polite way of notifying users. Let's see how that works in practice first, and then I will explain what I did and how it works in detail.
Voiceover on Chrome.
Now on the screen you see a button which named polite, and when I click this button, a polite notification will be triggered, and we will see how screen readers, my screen reader behavior when notification appears.
Aria Live Polite button application.
I'm on a button now, and now I'm clicking it.
Press Aria Live Polite button. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Hi, you just got 1,000 subscribers.
Okay, what happened now? I clicked a button and I triggered a polite notification. This notification appeared not immediately, but after some delay. And then, in the meanwhile, I started reading a text. And then, when screen reader was reading somewhere in the middle of this text, a new notification appeared. And what screen reader did, it found a place when it could be, to say politely, okay to stop reading. In this case, it's just the end of the text. And screen reader read till the end of the text, and then he pronounced a new notification. And this is a called polite way of notifying users. In addition to polite way, there is an assertive way. An assertive way works totally different. Let's see in practice how assertive way of notifying user works.
Aria Live Assertive button application.
I'm on a button now. I click it again, and then I will start reading the text.
Press Aria Live Assertive button. My mom always said life was like a service is unavailable. Please try again later.
What happened now? When screen reader was reading somewhere in the middle of this text, a new notification appeared. And we consider this notification as very important notification. Service is unavailable, so maybe something...
Lindsay Gamble has left the meeting.
Oops. Somebody left the meeting. Good. So we consider this error notification as really important, and we used assertive way of notifying users. Screen reader was reading somewhere in the middle of the text, and then new notification appeared, and screen reader stopped immediately reading and pronounced as our message. And this is a so-called aggressive way of notifying users. I would not recommend to use this a lot, but in some cases, as you've seen, for example, in the case we have now, when a really important notification comes to the browser, we can use that way because this is quite important for the users.
Voiceover off.
And as I already said, live region, it's not only about area live attribute. There are many other attributes and values, and we will not talk about all of them today. Instead, I would recommend you to check out an article on the MDN website about live region technique. You will find there a lot of information about this topic. And even if this technique looks really simple, there are a couple of things we need to know in advance before. There are some tips I would like to tell you. First of all, technically it's possible to add any attribute and assign any attribute value with the JavaScript dynamically, but in the screen reader world it doesn't work, because if you add area live, for example, with a set attribute method, technically it's going to be correct, it's going to be in the DOM tree, and this element will have this attribute, but screen reader will not update you with the new information. That's the way how screen reader works. In order to control screen readers, we really need to add this value and attribute at the very beginning when page is just loaded, and then update dynamically content of this element. So that's the first thing. The next thing is browser support. For better compatibility, I would recommend you to use not only area live with value polite when you want to notify users politely, but you can add another attribute with a role status, and this way most of the browsers and screen readers and operating system, most of this combination will pronounce whatever you want, because otherwise not all the screen readers, not all the browsers work well with the area live alone. And the same way with area live and value assertive. If you want this combination to work in as many browsers and devices as possible, please use role with value alert in addition to area live assertive. This way you will support many browsers, almost all of them, at least popular combinations. And the next thing is that we can, of course, create these elements with the area live attribute manually, but there are already several tools we can use. For example, on-demand live region, which was created by Hayden Pickering, and no need to create any elements. If you use this tool, you would simply create an object, live region, and then when you want to update screen reader with some information, you will simply call a method say with the text you want screen reader to pronounce for you. And it's gonna work really nice. For example, in this presentation, I'm using this tool and it works nice. Now let's take a look at another example. Let's imagine that our website supports private messaging, and now we need to send an email. And we already know that notifying users is quite a good thing, and also we need to care about screen reader users. And we're already using all techniques we discussed so far, and now let's see how the sending email will work for us.
Voiceover on Chrome.
I'm focusing on the send email button.
Send email button application.
And I click it with the screen reader.
Adrian Polonio has joined the meeting.
Okay. Clicking the button.
Press send email button. Email was successfully sent.
What happened now? We clicked a button, and then at some point a new notification came to the browser which says, which has a confirmation text. Email was successfully sent. And this is really nice because we not only see this notification visually, we also control a screen reader pronounce this text. And this makes our send email button accessible for all the users. But if you look a little bit more carefully on the at the notification, you will see that in addition to confirmation text, there are some more elements. For example, you can see 3 buttons there. Undo button, which will simply cancel our email. For example, if we send an email by mistake, there is a possibility to cancel it quickly. You can click an undo button and you will not send any information. There is also a view message button. You can click it and open your message you just sent. And there is also a close notification button. And this is a really common practice. For example, Google used this notification a lot in all the services like YouTube, Gmail, and other services. And this is really nice. If you see a notification, physically see the notification, you can see those buttons and click any button you want, right? And it's not a problem to use a mouse to click them. But if you are a screen reader user, first of all, you don't even know that this button exists in the page because screen reader, in our case, didn't tell us anything about that, right? Second thing is, even if you know that these buttons are in the notification, you need to spend some time in order to find this notification because with a screen reader, you need to really navigate through all the page and then find notification and then find those buttons and then click any of these buttons if you want. But this notification, usually it doesn't stay on the page forever. It appears, stays for some second, and then disappears. And if you were not able to find this notification in these buttons while notification is staying on the page, you lost the possibility to use those buttons, right? And this is a problem. So, as we can see now, live regions technique works, but it doesn't do all the things we want it to do.
Voiceover off.
And here we came to another important point. All these asynchronous components, they are not only bringing a new information to the browser, but they can contain some elements which will allow user to perform some actions on the web page. So our job as developers also to make all potential actions in the web page accessible for all the people. And we need to use another technique because, as we just saw in the previous example, live region technique doesn't really help in this situation. And the next technique we will use for making asynchronous components accessible is to control a focus. We need to understand that most of the browsers, they work in a way that once you move a focus from one element to another element, screen readers will automatically pronounce a content of a new focused element. And we will use that screen reader feature to control screen reader, and also with the focus, we will make our components more, to say, user-friendly. Let's see how we can improve our send email button. I'm starting screen reader again.
Voiceover on Chrome.
I'm focusing on the button.
Send email button application.
And I click it.
Press send email button. Email was successfully sent. Undo view message. Close notification. Group.
So what happened now? I clicked the button and then again a new notification appeared, and this time instead of using a real life attribute, we simply moved a focus from a button to the new notification. And now you can see this purple or pink border around notification. That means that this element got a focus. And screen reader automatically pronounced all the content from this element, including the button text. And in addition to screen reader update, what we have now with this focus, that now notification is focused. And now if you want to jump to undo button or view message button, we simply need to click a tab key one time. Look, I'm clicking tab key now.
Undo button.
And I'm on the first interactive element inside of this component. I click it again.
View message button.
And I'm on the view message button. And now I click it again.
Close notification button.
And I'm on the close notification button. Let's say I don't want to use all these two previous options. I simply want to close notification. I click it.
Send email button.
And the focus moves back to the send email button. And this behavior was not done originally. After you created element, after you created these elements, you need to implement all this behavior yourself. But look, with a simple focus control, we made our send email button not only accessible for screen reader users, but also more convenient for all the users, more user-friendly to say.
Send email button.
Okay. Okay. And a couple of tips about focus control technique. First of all, some of the elements, like interactive elements such as a button, link, inputs, text area, and some other elements, they are focusable by default. So you don't need to do anything in order to move focus to one of these elements. But if you want to move a focus to any other elements, for example, to a div, that's what we did in our case, because notification is not a button. It's a simple div, and we made it focusable by adding a top index with a value either a 0, or you can use any positive numbers. And so we're making a div focusable this way. But if you use this technique, you need to be sure that it's working in all the browsers, because unfortunately all the browsers, different browsers and different screen readers, they are handling focus move a little bit differently. So if you use that technique, please make sure that your feature is working still in all the browsers you need to support in the application. And that was a theory. And now at the end, I would like to show you 3 examples how we can use either one or another, or even both of these techniques we discussed today, and make accessible and user-friendly interfaces. And first example will be really simple. Let's imagine again that our website supports a private messaging, which doesn't actually mean that once we get a new message, we want to open it and read it, right? We just, I don't know, we are just getting a lot of emails during the day, and we read them when we have time for that, right? But it's really nice to notify users about upcoming emails, and visually it's already done. Usually we do that with badges or some other visual notifications, but with the screen reader, we can use a live region technique in order to update screen reader users about incoming emails. Let's see how that works.
Voiceover on Chrome.
I will focus on the update email button now.
Update email button. Application.
Click it and start reading a text.
Press update email button. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. You have one unread message.
And what happened now, I clicked the button, update email, and then I started doing something on the page. And in this case, I simply started reading a text. And then at some point, a new email came, and I didn't want to notify my users immediately, because it's not that important, right? It's more important to make a user experience on the page as smooth as possible. So interrupt users is not a good practice, but it's nice practice to notify users politely that now you have a new message. And with the screen reader case, I simply use a live region technique and area live with attribute polite. And once screen reader decided that it's time to update screen reader users with the new information, it simply pronounced that you now have one unread message, which is good.
Voiceover off.
Next example. Oh, sorry. Email is not the only case when you can use live region technique. For example, if you have a couple of different widgets on your web page, for example, a weather widget, if a weather is changed, it's nice maybe to notify users that, hey, the weather is now different. So it's kind of good way of doing that, of updating users. Or if you have a widget about a stock market, some, I don't know how much some papers cost or whatever. I'm not really deep in that topic. So it's nice to update users when some values in these widgets are changed. Or maybe if we have a sport widget and we are following some match live, it's nice to notify users when the score is changed. So you can use your imagination and implement this practice in any case in your website. So just be a little bit more creative, and this technique will work for you. The next example is a registration form. That's a really common practice, because we used forms a lot in our web pages. Either it can be a registration page or login page or or any other form on the page. You can implement these practices I'm going to talk about now for every form. And what is good about this form, that we will use both technique in the combination. So let's see how that works first. So I'm starting a screen reader. And now my goal is to register to a website. And now I need to fill 2 inputs with email and with a password. So now I click tab and I focus on email first.
Email, edit text, me at example.com, application.
Okay, and now I need to enter my email. And let's say
me.
me.
You at. M-A-I-L,
And look, now I made a mistake on purpose. But let's say we don't know about that, and now we want to jump to the password. But instead of sending this wrong email to the server and then validate it there, usually what we do in our websites, we are validating in the browser. These kind of simple things we can validate in the browser. And we can do it, for example, on the blur event. Look, now I'm clicking tab again and jumping to the password. And what happens now?
Not valid email.
What happens now? We validated an email and we figured out that it's wrong. And now we need to notify users that the email is wrong. Usually we did it with a text, validation text, and also we used a red color to show that this is kind of important. This is an error. It's not gonna work. And now we updated screen reader by using a live region technique with the text of notification. Now screen reader users know that there is an error. And now I want to fix that error. I simply click Shift Tab to move back.
Misspell, me at mail, so edit text, app misspell, comma.
And change comma to period.
L, period.
Oops.
Comma, period, L.
Good. And now I click Tab again and jump to the password field.
Password. Please use at least one character, one number, one symbol, and keep your password at least 8 characters long. Secure edit text, bullet.
When we jump to the password field and when email is valid, you heard that screen reader pronounced not only a label of this field, like a password, but also pronounced some additional text about what password we expect and what are the rules for the password. And we see that now we need to use at least one character, one number, symbol, and also keep the password long enough. And now I'm starting typing my password. For now, I will simply type Latin letters.
Very weak password. Very weak password.
What's happening now? On the every keystroke, we are making a validation for password and we updating users immediately. So in addition to using, for example, a blur event, we can use any other events like key down event in this case, or we can use a key press or any other update event. And this way, we simply checking the password after every keystroke, validating it, and notifying users just immediately. Okay, now I will type a number.
So password.
Now it's not bad already, but still not that good. And now I will type a symbol.
Good password.
And now I will make my password 8 characters long.
Good password. Good password. Good password. Great password.
So now it's good enough. And now I'm going to jump to the button register and click it.
Register button.
I click the registration button.
Press register button. There's one validation error. Bullet. This email is already registered. Please try another one.
So what happened now? We clicked a register button and then there was a request to the server, and then we figured out that this email was already used. And in order to notify our users about this error, first of all, we displayed a visual notification. So now there is a visual confirmation that we have an error, and this error also is explained there. So now people who see the screen, they know about that. But for a screen reader users, we made this validation text focusable, and we moved a focus there. And please make sure that we put this element with a validation text before form. And I did it, we did it on purpose, because look, now we have a focus on the validation text, and we already know what is the text about because screen reader pronounced everything. And now in order to jump back to the form and change our email, we simply need to click Tab key one time. So we put a text, focusable validation text before form, and user experience is really nice because of that. Look, I click in Tab,
me@mail.com,
and I'm in the email field now. And now I'm changing the email.
MEENOTHER.
And then click register button.
8 characters, register button. Press register button. You have been successfully registered.
And here we used a simple live region technique in order to notify users about successful registration.
Voiceover off.
And this how with a simple HTML, JavaScript, and area, we made the complex form accessible for all the users, which is really nice. And the last example for today, let's take a look how we can notify users when we are uploading the file on the website. For example, if you write email, you can attach some files. So this file uploading is quite common technique.
VoiceOver in Chrome.
And there is a lot of things we can notify users about. Let's click the button Upload File and see how that works.
Upload file button. Application.
Click it.
10% loaded. 60% loaded. 86%. 100% file document.pdf was successfully loaded.
And after we clicked a button Upload File, a lot of things happened. First of all, screen reader told us that we clicked a button, then uploading started, and then screen reader notified us that yes, now we are uploading a file, and then screen reader constantly notify us about the status of this uploading, like 10% loaded, 50% loaded, 90% loaded. And once a file was loaded, we displayed a notification, visual and screen reader notification with a confirmation text. And now this component is ready to be used by all the users.
VoiceOver off.
And that's pretty much it, what I wanted to show you today. And let's recap what we covered today. First of all, informing users is quite an important thing. Our users should feel comfortable on the websites, and we can make a user experience much better by notifying users and informing users about everything that's happening. And in order to control a screen reader for screen reader users, there are two techniques. First technique, it's a live region technique. For example, we can use a real life attribute with a polite or assertive value, or we can use a focus control technique in order to not only control a screen reader, but making user experience better. If you want to know more information about accessibility, I would recommend you to read one of the official documentation sites about accessibility. And this site, it contains a lot of small examples with the source code and some explanation and some references to accessibility rules, which is really nice. I use this website a lot on everyday basis. If you don't know anything about accessibility, I would recommend you to start with a book, Accessibility for Everyone, written by Laura Kolbeck. You will get more than enough information in order to start making accessible components. And also for a little bit more advanced developers, I would recommend to check out Inclusive Component website made by Hayden Pickering. In this site, he created a list of elements and he made them accessible, and not only made them accessible and showed it in the demo examples, but also explained how and why he used different accessibility techniques. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer. And also I will publish these slides in the Twitter somewhere. You will find it. So you will have all the links. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sergei. Let me turn my video on. I'll give you a chance to catch your breath. We did have a couple questions for you. One of them was, how do you decide when something is polite versus assertive for screen reader users?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a simple rule for myself. It's my own rule. I don't know, maybe it's not actually my rule, but I use it. I figured it out myself. For me, everything is polite. And assertive is only when you really need to disturb people and notify about important things. That's a thing. So I use polite, and if I have some cases on the website, very important stuff like error messages and stuff, I use assertive, but usually it's really rare case.
And I have a question, and I'm not sure how to frame this, but is there a use case for programming the voice on the voiceover to have a different tone or inflection or a whole different voice when a notification pops up?
Ooh, good question. I have never used it, and I'm pretty sure that it's not possible at the moment, but maybe I'm wrong, because I have never had this goal to control something. Usually what I'm doing when I want to control somehow a speech, for example, if you use two sentences and you concatenate them and use like one screen reader, how to say it, a session, when screen reader starts something and ends something, like a chunk, usually if you don't use a comma or a period between, it's really like a fast, and you will never figure out the differences. So, for example, if I want to have screen reader to stop something at least for some time, or have like a pause, I use either one period or 2 or 3 even. Then screen readers can kind of identify these kind of things, but about intonation, I'm not sure. Usually they are really smart to pronounce like question intonation or statement intonation, but I don't know. Probably there is nothing about like really controlling that.
Okay, so punctuation seems pretty important.
I use punctuation a lot. For example, in the password validation, there is a label, like a password, and there is a password rules. And what I did, I put a column in this case, or I could put like a period, and that screen reader would say password, and you need to blah 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 rules, right? You need to follow those.
So, because I've noticed that screen readers will sometimes ignore things like when it's in strong or emphasis or in something like that. So there's just sort of no way to control that then.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing, but I would say if screen reader tells everything, this is already like 80%, 90% done, and now we are talking about like a cherry on the top, right? Oh, it's nice to have it, but I would say I know a couple of blind people, and they told me that they just used to use it. They know how a screen reader works, and if screen reader does something, they know already the tool.
Okay. Also, is there a suggested pause length in between an announcement versus other elements on the page?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Is there a suggested pause length between an announcement versus other elements on the page?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Cannot say anything about that because didn't actually have that question for myself even.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Adrian asked here on the chat, how about hidden inputs in sections? When do you use them? And he's talking about ARIA hidden, only hidden for screen readers, not visually.
Do you mean something that is visually present on the page, but screen readers are ignoring that, right? Or backwards?
The first.
The first. I used this technique for icons, for example. If, let's say, our send email button, right? Remember, it's like a text and icon. I used a role presentation, which literally means for screen reader, just don't pronounce it. I used the icon there. It like technically it's an image. A screen reader has to say something about image, but I explicitly told him no. It's just for making stuff beautiful, nothing more. For example, this one. What else? Cannot remember. I use it sometimes. Most often I use like backwards technique for hiding stuff, but make it pronounceable by screen reader and readable.
Sure. I don't know how to say this person's name, but they're asking, are there any special techniques or considerations for using ARIA live with asynchronous elements inside a shadow DOM?
Ooh, shadow DOM. Maybe I'm not the best person to ask about that because I usually use the simplest technique I can find, and shadow DOM is something that it's quite complex. I don't know. Never used that. Seems like I don't know how to answer any questions today, right? I don't know, maybe more practical person than theoretical, because for me, if shadow DOM doesn't bring a value for me and my users, I don't use that.
Sure. Carrie asked, do you run into issues with different screen readers when it comes to announcements, or behaving vastly different from others?
Yeah, that's a issue actually, because I can tell the short story. I was working for one project, and this project from the beginning had really strong accessibility requirements, like a AA, and we had to achieve it. And I did like almost all the job because I was quite a fan of this topic, and it was nice in my voiceover and Mac. But then there was a person, like a third-party person, who simply tested our website for accessibility, and I got back a couple of errors, and I tested them, and it worked for me in my voiceover and Mac. And then I figured out that he is talking about JAWS or NVDA, for example, and there's something. For me, the biggest issue is when you're trying to control a focus. For example, Safari or Firefox, there are some problems. Not problems, they are handling focus move differently, and once a new element gets a focus, different browsers will pronounce different things, and sometimes they won't even pronounce. That's a thing. That's the biggest issue for me, at least. And I do like a lot of stuff, like hacks or workarounds in order to fix that problem. But sometimes the problem is solving by checking one checkbox inside the, for example, browser settings in Safari, for example. So browsers are different, yes. Focus move, it's a one technique. Then area labeled by, it doesn't work smoothly on all the browsers. In my voiceover, you can add area labeled by to any element, and it's gonna work. In different browsers, it's only interactive elements like a button or form element, say.
So it's important to test.
It's important, yes.
Do you have a recommended set of screen readers to test with?
Oh, yeah, sure. If you use a Mac, you don't have a choice. You use a voiceover, and it's not that complex as you can think about, because it's, yeah, you will spend some time to figure out what to do, but the main thing is to make it comfortable for you. And actually, some years ago, maybe last year, I guess it was, I even gave a talk in the conference about how to use basic screen reader options for accessibility testing, and gave some suggestions how to get use of it. So Mac and VoiceOver. Then if you use Windows, you can use either NVDA, which is free, and it's quite popular. It's a second place by popularity, and a lot of people use it. It's not that perfect in pronouncing stuff, and you need to set it up because it comes with a little set of settings, and you need to maybe set it up for your needs, but it works quite nice. And also you can use JAWS, but JAWS has a couple of problems. First of all, it's really expensive. It's in Germany, it's more than 1,200 euros. So it's quite a thing, right? But you can use it for free for 40 minutes, and then you can reload the system and use it again. Or what we did in our company, we requested from the company to buy us a small USB dongle. It's a simple security key in this USB. So you download JAWS, you install it, but it doesn't work because it needs authorization, right? And then you plug in this dongle and you use it. And it costed for us, yes, 1,200, I guess, but we are many developers using that, so it works. It's still, you don't have to buy it every time, and all the developers can use only one security key, which works.
It looks like Adrian might have a question, but they're still typing, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, 1 minute.
While they're typing, I just wanted to make, oh, here we go. There's a known bug in Firefox. The focus doesn't focus on anchor links.
Yes, I know that. That's a common thing. I don't know what to do with that, because there are some, in this case it's a bug, in Safari case it's their vision, how they see. You cannot focus on links without checking a checkbox. This kind of things. Yeah, I do agree that there are some stuff in other browsers. I don't know, wait for fixing, and that's it. Nothing more.
Can you wrap it in a button to get around that issue?
Yeah, of course. That's what I did a couple of times, but then screen reader will pronounce that it's a button, right? Yeah, but for me, if screen reader is pronouncing something as a button, but this is a link, it's already better if you give a proper description in the label or hidden label or whatever, like wherever you put this text, because the main thing for users to know what this element does. Yes, semantically it should be a link, but it's a button, and it's not the biggest problem. If by focusing on the button you know what this button does, it's okay. Why can't you just add a URL and say something, hey, this is a kind of link and it's gonna redirect you to this URL, HTTP blah 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 blah. So even this solution would work. I would say it's a hug, but
yeah, Adrian clarified that their rule was buttons perform actions, links lead to new page path. It's okay to have buttons that look like links and links that look like buttons, but always following accessibility rules, ARIA role semantics. That's what I wouldn't wrap in a button. So,
Yeah, as I said, it's a hack if there is a goal to, totally makes sense. For me, that's my rule, personal rule. I would prefer, I don't know, maybe I would search for another solution, but you can use that button, right? But what Adrian says now, I'm totally agree with that, because everything which does action, it's a button, and in 80% of cases, it's a button. And the rest is a link, and you need to be sure that your link is not only a link like an anchor tag, but also it has a proper href. Even if you use a handlers for that. For example, in my current project, we are using React, and you cannot simply click a link as a regular link because you need to handle the routing, right? Application routing. You don't have to reload the page. And what we are doing, we are using href, like a real URL 2 times. First of all, we put it in href, which doesn't make sense in the single page application, but we do it only for screen readers because screen reader users can access that URL, right? And once you click this button or link, we prevent this event, do something, and then do simple React routing, and that's it. So we are kind of making the same job twice, but for screen reader users, it works really nice. I totally agree with Adrian.
Good. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions. I wanted to thank
there's one.
It says server size, that's when server-side rendering comes in, and boom, welcome to front-end development.
Boom, yeah.
Do you have any parting words, Sergei?
No, thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for presenting. I want everyone to know that the links will be available on YouTube, on the YouTube video when it's posted online later this week. And remember to join us next month to talk about all things accessibility. And I wanted to kind of give a shout out that we're always recruiting for new speakers. We make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups in tech in our meetup. So please let us know if you have any ideas on how we can make Ally Talks more friendly to everyone. And we want to continue the conversation in the questions. And so if you have any more questions, or people who watch the YouTube video later want to call out questions on Twitter, just use the hashtag A11yTalks, and we can continue the conversation in the days to come. So thank you, Sergei.
Thank you.
Okay. Enjoy the Alps.
Enjoy the rain, I would say.
Well, is it better to hike in the snow or the rain?
I prefer sun, to be honest.
Oh. I think all of us do.
It's raining already like for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's how we get our flowers and our water, so.
Yeah, think positive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.